Today we're going to be doing some victory at sea. So more specifically, what we're going to be just doing is running through some options just for some additional play and introducing the new concept of submarines. So this is a little bit of a tricky subject. It falls into a couple of different bags and you might have to bear with me a little bit in terms of explanation, but whilst it's as straightforward as you can imagine, there are also some pitfalls. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing to consider is your playing field. Now the maps that come with the game are what are listed as AO size, and each one of these folds that you can just sort of see in here equates to an A4 sheet of paper. For any Americans out there, that's sort of like just over 8 inches by just over 11 inches. If you're running a 4x6 table, which is generally a standard length for most things, most other games, then they suggest looking at 1 foot or 12 inch by 12 inch blocks, so you end up with 4x6. What we have here by using the folds or the A4 method is you end up with 32 spots, which is a little bit more, but then you've actually got a little bit more space to play with here, and it's really quite a long sort of area. Now if you work with long edge to long edge games, so we're just lining up on one long edge, the opponent lines up on the other long edge, still imagine the half line, because you're going to use half the playing surface for deployment. Now the 3 scenarios that are provided within the submarine section are very specific scenarios, and they use the short edge, lining up on the short edge to short edge, and the halfway line being where the submarines deploy. So what we would do if you had 2 lots of submarines, obviously then you would deploy in each halves, ignoring being too close to each other, because that's how submarines work. But we can explain the next step of the head mess after that. So basically where the folds are is where we're going to run. I've already picked out the US forces that we're running with today: 3 Fletcher destroyers and a Northampton cruiser, which equates to about 310 points, and there's a reason for that. The scenario, well not scenario, but what we're running today are 3 subs, the rule of 3, primarily because I've got 3 subs. Each sub is worth 50 points. And if we can get some clarity on some of the stats, we can just have a quick look at the board here for what each sub looks like. And each sub is worth 50 points. So for 3 subs, obviously a total of 150. The recommendation is that for an all submarine force, you double the size of the opponent. It goes to roughly 310, but yeah, why quibble? I wasn't going to give one of the subs a 5-point upgrade, so 300 should still be roughly about right. We're just here to explain how it works. Each of the subs, like in all of my units that are multiples, I've just got a 1, 2 and a 3. The Fletchers are the same. And then that just goes to the cards. 1, 2 and 3. Okay, so the first head mess is obviously how you handle deployment. The most important parts about working with submarines are points, obviously, pre-deployment, deployment, and the initial pre-first round activities. After that, it's not a lot of difference. There's just a few kinky things that happen in between, but we can work them out. this is what I was talking about before, how you grid out your playing area, and the initial playing zone is considered to be a 4x6, which might be fine if you're playing 4x6, but if you're using the provided maps, then you need to work with something else, and going with the folds or the A4 method, it does add a few extra pieces, sort of squares, so you go from 24 to 32, but it just makes it easy, that's all. Because if you try and line it up, square it up, make it sort of work, it's because it's not even, you just actually end up just breaking it up into nearly A4 sheets of paper anyway. So we'll just run with the folds / A4 method for the maps that come with the actual game. I would also recommend having some tokens available, just because you'll need to be able to identify the different types of movement or types of locations that the submarine is at. They're on the surface, they are submerged, and they run deep. So what I might do is decide that the ring, the gold one, is run deep, and submerged is the smaller die. So when we've got the ships, when we've got the submarines on the board, they can move from submerged to either on the surface or running deep. But if they're either on the surface or running deep, they can only move to submerged. You need to be at least submerged to be able to fire the torpedoes. So if you're running deep, you can't fire torpedoes. You have to be submerged or on the surface. You'll see the movement has two variables, 4 and 1 in this instance, and that's so that you've got 4 inches when you're on the top surface, 1 inch when you're submerged or running deep. And yes, they're agile, which means they can pretty much always turn. Then we've got our usual stats, which are exactly the same. They're fragile, being 3 1s, and so on. For the initial setup of the submarines, they actually don't go on the board. Once you've got your layout defined, surface ships are deployed, then the submarines are calculated as to where they are. Obviously, normally, if it's 2 players, you would keep them secret, just write it down and put them attached to the card, because obviously there's no extra person here. I've made up these cards, shuffled them around, done my bit to make sure that I don't know where they are, and you certainly can't see what they are on the other side. So I'll just randomly assign those to the 3 subs, and the way how I have it configured, starting in the back top corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So starting in the top corner, going to the bottom corner, 1 through 16, like that. And then when we put the submarines on the board, we can work from there. If we want to start the submarines on the surface, we just put them on the surface just like we would with a normal ship. And they're on the surface. And it doesn't matter. And then they can do what they do. But I want to start with them submersed, just to also highlight how the following rules work. Not knowing where they are, that's where they've gone here. All right. So we're now at the pre-game phase. So we'll have a look at the Northampton class cruiser. The Northampton class cruiser has a trait Aircraft 4. And part of the good thing with the aircraft is that you can set them up for submarine searches. So what we can do is we can set them up for various orders beforehand, but in this instance we're going to set them all up to be looking for submarines, which means that we assign them 4 locations on the board, and then they can look for subs. Just to be clear, I suppose the purpose of the mission here is for these guys to try and clear out the subs, which are somewhere, and that's pretty much it. It's just like maybe, I suppose, get off the edge of the board, I don't know. Basically they're going to be moving forward. Now, by not putting the submarines on the board to begin with, they are submerged or running deep, which we'll choose over there in a moment, and we can try and get things to coordinate a little bit. So this is one of those instances where you just got to bear with me, because for the first movement phase, well, until the movement phase is they decide that they're going to at least show up on the board, they stay in their sector, they stay in their zone, they don't move from there. But when you decide to flip them, to put them on at the end of a movement phase, they can be anywhere within that sector. So when the submarines are submersed, no one has line of sight, so they cannot have a shot at them. They have to detect them first, and every round, that's when you've got your aircraft that you've assigned to submarine warfare going into looking for subs. So for the first round, when they're not on the board, you've got to pick locations, roll a die, and work out whether a sub has been detected. A lot like the battleship game that we all know and love. But then at the end, when they do show up, which we'll reveal at the end of the first round, that's when they can come up, but they'll be submerged, and then every round after that, the submarine warfare, the observation for submarines from the aircraft that you've assigned, get to make an attempt all the time. So you get four aircraft, so that's 4 dice. We have 3 subs. On a 4+, it gets spotted, if it's able to be spotted. So based on what we were talking about before, so this is section 6, 10, 11, and 14 that we're going to run and drop some anti-submarine observational zones over, and that's the area that they're scouring on there. So we'll roll 4+. If there's a success, we'll have a quick look on the numbers to see whether a sub has been detected. 6, 10, section 11, and 14. Nope, not even going to bother looking, seeing what those are. None of those attempts were anywhere near successful. Now normally we would also check for initiative as well as first round movement, like who moves first, who moves second, and so on, but the subs aren't on the board and they can't move, so we'll just run through the US movement and then we'll do the big reveal. Full steam ahead, they all just moved, went straight forward. 7 inches for the destroyers, 6 for the Northampton. So that is technically the end of the movement phase, and we might as well bring up the reveal for the subs right now. Sub number 1, submersed. Number 6. Now it can be placed anywhere in that zone. You can just sort of roughly make out that outline there. So I've brought him up on that corner right there and submersed. So still not spotted, but they're here. 14. 7. So we have 2 subs and a forward one there. All of them are submersed. None of them are spotted. And when they move, they can only move 1 inch. These are the targets here. Specifically that, I'm assuming that's going to be the target. Yeah, why not? As a side note, it's entirely possible to have kept these subs down and not brought out at all. But I just wanted to do what I did then, just to sort of show how it works. Basically, the moment that now that they're sort of ready, they're here. I could have kept them off the board for another round, bringing the enemy closer still, or even a third round, but it just would have been really quite boring. So this will do. Now the enemy aircraft will have rough targets as to what they're looking for, and they can make actual attempts on those subs. They're not having to try and guess zones. The subs can still choose to run deep if they wish, or they can surface. So now we get to round 2 and we roll for initiative. So before we roll for initiative, I'm putting the 4 dice from the aircraft observations into submarines, and I'm going to go 1 die for subs 1 and 3, and 2 dice for sub number 2, which is the forward advanced sub. So sub number 1, nope. Sub number 2, and sub number 2 is detected, and 3, nope. So sub number 2 is detected, but no one can shoot at it anyway, but at least they know where it is. You can't engage with a sub with anti-submarine warfare, depth charges, or anything like that unless it's detected and spotted first. Otherwise, it's not, and you can't technically go up to a you can't detect it until it's within 8 inches of the submersed sub. So having the aircraft spot the sub first helps. Then when you keep spotting the subs, and that at least means that you're able to move and engage, as opposed to having to try and detect and so on beforehand. But we'll get to that as well in a few moments. Alright, so now it's initiative, and we've got the Americans on a 5 and the Germans on a 6. Sub 2 just moved an inch and moved directions. Subs 1 and 3 surfaced and moved forward. Basically, after all the movement was done, as I said for those, but on the American side, you move obviously model to model, but I just wanted to show you what the Germans had done. The Americans sort of converging onto the one sub that they know, that they've discovered. And that's the end. We have no other subs to reveal. Good. So now it's pre-initiative, where we get to roll for our observations on round number 3. Sticking to what we had before, 1 die for subs 1 and 3, and 2 for sub 2. There is a bonus for sub 2 because it was detected previously, so now they're sort of hovering over it. We can go from here. So sub 1, nope. Sub 2, nope. And yep. And sub 3, nope. So sub 2 is detected again, which is fine, I suppose. At this range, there's not a lot that's in range at the moment, but we'll see what happens getting closer. So now it's time for initiative. Germans are red, and the Germans go first, alternating back and forth. Germans first, Americans, and so on. Again, we come to one of those instances where down the way you may want to think of the pass or the skip protocol, because I've got 4 ships here on one side and 3 on the other. It can lend itself to being more advantageous to have lots of ships, so giving the opponent the opportunity to skip just sort of evens it up a little bit. So this is what we'll have on our side. We'll do this in this game where we're playing with the skip, and the Germans choose to do that for their first move, sacrificing that. So let's go. Let's have a quick look at depth charges. The only weapon used by a surface ship against a submarine is a depth charge. And the important things here is that it's the rear arc, and 3" is the range. It's an attack dice of 1. They always hit on a 5+, and then it's 2 damage dice with a slow loading. But you've got to detect it first. Still kept 1 and 3 up on the surface for the moment, but that one's submerged. And we're getting closer. So, observation craft, then initiative. Because it's worked so well so far, 1, 3, then 2 dice on sub number 2. 1, nope, 3, nope, and the 2 dice on number 2. Yes. Number 2 is still being detected. Initiative, Germans red. Alright, that's even. I have been toying with an idea that if it's even, whoever didn't go last time won, but the general rule is roll off, and it's the Americans. The Northampton gun range is 32. Because we've got these 2 on the surface and they're within 30 inches of the Fletchers, they are visible, but the Fletchers aren't able to reach. They don't have weapons large enough. They've got an 18-inch range max, and this one's submerged, so they can't shoot. All they can do, they have to get close enough to use the depth charges. Same deal with this one here. From the range, just short. Now, while the surface craft are on the surface, obviously they can be seen. However, having the observation craft keep them under observation means that it's easier to detect later. They're on the surface. The moment that they go under, they are going to lose any line of sight or detection or anything else. And there's a good chance that this round they'll go at least submersed. So all 4 dice are going to go on sub number 2, because whatever they put on sub numbers 1 and 3 will get lost the moment they submerse. And now that we're getting to a pointy end, well, not the pointy end, but we're getting to a sharp end, it's better to run with what we've got here. So we're going 4 as ice on sub number 2 to keep it detected, which is fine because, you know, numbers, values, yep, it's all good. Got a loss detection, you never know. And then it's initiative. And it's the Germans. Firing torpedoes is not an exact science. So the ranges obviously have an effect. Torpedoes automatically have a 2 modifier on their firing solution, and then you add the pluses for everything else along the way. So better the closer you are, but torpedoes always have that little bit of disadvantage. After movement, what we've got are the 3 destroyers, the cruiser, sub number 2, sub numbers 1 and 3. Sub number 2 is in range, but in terms of the destroyer, you're looking at a lot of adjustments on that in order to make it right. So just under 8 from bridge or conning tower to bridge. It's just under 8, which keeps it within short range, which means that that's a base 4 on the hit, which goes to a 6 for torpedoes. And then we've got some modifiers that are in play, which come into the adjustment for speed of the target, because it went 7 inches. It's a destroyer, but it is in silhouette. So essentially, we're looking at 7s required, which is something that we don't have, obviously. So this round, no, there is no valid shots for torpedoes. And as the 10-inch range, not long enough to get to the cruiser this round. Maybe next one. This is a scenario where you'd want to be trying to get the the destroyers to throw up smoke in order to block line of sight of their targets. We're not going to do that, but that's just something to keep in mind. Destroyers can throw smoke, so that way they can create massive lines of blockage for line of sight, and no one can target anything. It's in the observation deck's interest to keep sub number 2 under observation. So what we'll do is we're just putting all 4 straight into that, because keeping 1 and 3 observed doesn't help. And if there's a chance that you could lose sight of sub number 2, that's when all hell is truly going to break loose. And yes, still detected by intensive observation from the overhead planes. And now we've got initiative, and the Americans go first. So basically, after movement, we've kept that detected all the way through. I've measured it up, and that is within 3 inches of the rear arc. So the depth charge attack is valid. Americans will go first in the shooting because they won the initiative. Now it's time here. And then that's obviously in range for that there. So let's see what happens. Just to prove I'm not making it up, from tower to tower, 3 inches in the rear arc. So it's one attack with a 5+, and it misses. So now we put the loading token on because it's a slow load, so the ship can't do that for another round, has to reload. Fletcher number 2 with the rearm. Between the cruiser and the sub, it's about 8 inches. And the cruiser doesn't get the same advantages as the destroyers. So what we need to do is roll a 6. It's the 4 for the short range. There's no other modifiers for speed or silhouette, and the 2 adjustment for the torpedo, meaning that the attacking dice need to roll 6s to hit. So the 4 torpedoes, we got 4 attack dice with 3 damage dice for every successful hit. Here we go, 4 attack dice, needing a 6. And we get 1. Place the rearm token on because they're slow loading. Now if we remember our torpedo rules, what we roll is the damage to the hull. 5 or higher means potential crits. We roll 3 damage dice for every successful hit. We hit once, so that's 3. The Northampton has 23 hull. We just inflicted 13 points of damage and 2 potential crits. Crit number 1 potential. Nope. Crit number 2 potential. Nope. Snake eyes. So with 10 hull remaining, just took a massive pounding and is a few points away from being critical. So because all of the 3 destroyers and the cruiser are within 8 inches of ship number 2, they each can make an attempt on a 4+ to detect the sub. The sub has fired, which makes it a little bit easier. So the spotter planes are using the other results to look for the subs 1 and 3. So sub number 1 is detected and sub number 3 is not. And we've got some of the other ships here, so they're all got the same chances of hitting, of discovery. So all 4 of them, and 2 discover the sub number 2. So now it's initiative. It's 2 6s, 2 1s, and the Germans go first, forcing the Americans to move first. So in terms of shooting, just do some measurements, but it would appear that destroyer number 1 gets to have a crack with the depth charge. This round number 2 has to rearm the depth charge. The sub number 2 has to reload all the torpedoes, and I don't think they're going to be in range of anything. The destroyers all moved their full range, their full move. Okay, so this one is within point blank range of this one. Now, destroyer number 2 moved fast as a destroyer, and so on. Firing torpedoes has obviously got its own adjustment. Point blank is at -1. Not in silhouette. I do not consider that to be in silhouette. My terms of silhouette are anything pretty much within the port or starboard arcs, and that is not silhouette. This one can fire from the silhouette, but it's in short range. So they both still need 7s to actually hit. Had this one been in silhouette, it would have been 6s, might have been worthwhile. Obviously this one can't fire. Reloading. We've got a depth charge, and that can do nothing. Fletcher number 1, 5+ on the depth charge, and it hits. So subs are a 2+ armor, and there's 2 damage dice to the depth charge. On a 2+, just inflicts 1 point of damage, and remembering that they've got 3 hull. And the moment that they're at 1 point, they've got the critical, so if both of those hit and do damage, then you're at a critical stage. And on a 5 or a 6, on a 6 is a critical potential for a critical on top. So anything but 1s. Well, there you go. Inflicting 1 point of damage. The U-boat number 2 has 2 hit points left, or hull points left, is not critical, and this round has rearmed her forward torpedoes. Okay, so the spotter aircraft. Now we have 3 ships that are within 8 inches of the sub, and they can all make their attempts. The spotter craft, or the observation craft, are going 2 for U-boat 1 and U-boat 3, because they're a little bit further out. And U-boat 1 detected, and U-boat 3 detected. Three ships for the sub. One of them does. That's all that's required. Initiative. And the Germans go first, forcing the Americans to move. So after movement, we've got an aft shot here in point blank. Well, I think I'll have to double check the range, but there. Forward shot into there. We can work out what we can do with that one. We've got a depth charge because number 2 has reloaded from last round, so they can fire a depth charge at sub number 3. Sub number 3 might have a decent shot at the cruiser as well, so there's a really good chance that that cruiser is going down. And in terms of where everyone landed, we've got the 3 subs. We can see it's a bit of a mess in terms of where it's all located. They just float around and we're good to go. Okay, so sub number 3 is 10 inches from the cruiser. So not going for a shot, extreme range, no, not at this point. The destroyer will get to do their depth charge attack in a moment. But first, the Germans fire. They're firing forward torpedoes against the cruiser, needing 4s because we're point blank and silhouette. and the torpedoes. So the ship, the target is large enough and clumsy enough and everything else that it doesn't qualify for any of the other modifiers, which is awesome for the sub. So 4 pluses. The aft torpedoes firing at Fletcher 1, and Fletcher 1 needs 6s on that one. So we'll do the forward firing first. Not that it matters, but we'll do forward firing first. And we hit with 2 of the torpedoes. So that's 66. Remembering that it's got 10 hit points left, or 10 hull points left. Yeah. And we've got enough damage there to almost sink a battleship. 15, 21, 25. 27 points of damage, which is, it's just huge. 27. No, that's a full salvo, and we've got 4 potentials for crits. Might as well do them. And that's 2 successful crits. Location of the first crit is location 9, and the second one is 3. So that's the engine and the crew. Now we roll for the level. Unlike when you get hit normally, you just move up to level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. But with a devastating attack, like from a torpedo or from a bomb, you roll a d6 and that's the level that it's set, and then you apply everything leading up to it. So first one is level 2, and the crew takes a level 1. Doesn't matter, it's sunk, but I just wanted to see if there was any dramatic effect in terms of explosions or anything else. But the Northampton is down, and now we do the depth charge attack against sub number 3. Alright, so the aft torpedoes against the destroyer. And no, needing 6s. Depth charge is one die, 5 plus. And it's a 6. So yep. 2 damage dice, needing a 2 plus. And both hit. So the ship is crippled, and it's got 3 traits: Agile, Sub-Hunter, and Submersible. So we roll on each one of those. On a 4 plus, you can no longer use that trait. So if you can no longer use Submersible, you immediately surface, and you're obviously on the surface. That's the Agile, Sub-Hunter, and the ship must surface. So the submarine is no longer a submarine. It's now a very weak boat with 1 point of damage, and its movement is halved. There's no actual marker for crippled, so I'm just using that as an identifier that the ship's been crippled. We've put the rearm tokens on the destroyer and the subs as required. Now we have no more aircraft for observations. We can just run with the 3 ships we've got here and see what happens. 2 ships within inches of the submarine number 2, and they don't make it. Lost sight of the sub. Now it's initiative, and it's 3 ships and 3 ships, so they're even Stevens in that regard. Americans win, forcing the Germans to go first. So basically what we're at is this submarine is on the surface and can be seen by the guns on both those destroyers and are within short range of that. The guns here, short range, aft torpedoes into the silhouette there. So the torpedoes are halved, so there's only 2 dice, needing 6s. And this one here, needing 6s with all the front dice there. And we're out of luck on everything on this side here. We're not detected anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, we're out of range on that. All right, guns, 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 guns. Americans go first. We're firing this one little U-boat, just attracting lots and lots of fire. So 3 attack dice. Number 2. Destroyer number 2 having a crack. 3 attack dice needing 4s. 2 hit. There's 1 damage dice each shot. It's at -2 on the AP. Remember, they've got a 2+, so we're looking at 4s, and there's no crits. 1 damage, that's enough to make it sink. We'll do the other one anyway. So that's 1 hit, and that's also a shot. So between the 2 of them, they managed to sink it, but the first one sank it anyway. So that's that one done. That's U-boat number 3 out of action. U-boat number 1 firing 4 dice, needing 6s into the silhouette of the destroyer. And we don't do it. Alright, so surveying the battlefield, we've lost 1 sub. This sub has 1 hit point left, or it has 2 hit points left. This one is untouched. The destroyers have to get the subs into the rear arc in order to use their depth charges, and so on. So, alright, I'm just going to finish it up here. We could easily just try and swirl around and figure it all out. The subs have to stay within point blank range of their targets in order to be able to get at least a 6+, as long as the subs are moving their full 7-inch movements. The moment that they move 6, then that's 1 pip in the direction of the submarine. So what we're looking at are subs of, these ones are 50 points. So the 3 of them taking on a 310 force. Yeah, okay, so that's reasonably equal. The torpedoes themselves are what causes all of the things, and then of course all the damage, and of course the subs are submersed for most of the time. So once they get into the thick of it, you've got to be constantly checking to see whether you detect them before you can even attack them. So that's always the hard thing. Once you lose the aircraft for spotters, so when you're initially setting up your forces and you have the number of aircraft that are available, you have to allocate which ones are for observation, which ones are for forward observing, for over the systems, over the shots, horizons shots, and submarine warfare. So my suggestion is that in a tournament play, probably not likely with subs. However, considering how they run, it might be worthwhile in order to readjust points. But you know, because I mean, like subs, if the scenarios suggest that a sub is worth twice as much as the surface craft, why aren't the subs actually valued more if they were meant to be in points match? Or if they were meant to be in tournament plays? That's just a thought, because they're submersible, they've got the torpedoes, they're hard to detect. You could easily pay a submarine tax, which is, okay, if you're going to have a submarine in your force, that's an additional, they're double that cost. So I understand that from a mechanics point of view, when a sub is 50 points, what they actually represent, the 3 hull, the 4 speed, the 2 or 3 weapon systems, the narrow field of operation. Yeah, they're worth 50 points. It's like a destroyer. They've got a purpose. It's one thing they do. However, the effect on the battlefield is huge. So in a larger game, if you decided to play points match with subs, perhaps if both sides had the same number of subs, because you've got submarine versus submarine warfare capability, that's always useful. But if you've got all surface, and if they're running a carrier operations type force, it's what you want to try and get out of the game. If you want big capital ships, they didn't really have subs inside. You know, from a game mechanics point of view, you might throw submarines in just because it's a great way to get a handful of dice for torpedoes, sixes and so on, and lots of damage, lots of chances for crits. In a realistic force, you're not going to have subs, like just as part of an actual carrier task force or combat group. So my suggestion is to still run without subs in tournament play. Points match, you guys work it out between yourselves. If one side wants to have the subs, then maybe run with the, okay, well, if for every 50 point sub, I'm getting an extra 50 points of list attached. You could do that. That's something that's like, you sort of know what each other's forces are and whatever else. Tournament play, a little bit different. So maybe run it like that. So the scenarios that they've got 3 different types of scenarios. Well, but they're all roughly, obviously they're subs, so they're roughly similar. But they're handy to get you familiar with how to do it. And what you could have done at the beginning for the first 3 turns, because there was no other surface craft, just had the destroyers and everything all move forward, and then do the big reveal once they're in this half, because you can't see them until they're on the board and without the aircraft detection and so on. So there was always that. So you've got a couple of options. The submarine warfare is kind of cool. It's pretty reflective of how savage they were. You could imagine the amount of fear when you get 2 or 3 subs converging onto a single ship, what that could do. So that's pretty, yeah, okay, you can sort of see how that works. And you can actually spread the fire if you wanted to. So if you've got 4 dice or 6 dice or whatever, however many for torpedoes, you could allocate the dice to each different attack. So if you had a scenario like that, for whatever reason, this sub could put 2 dice there and 2 dice onto that one, and then making their attacks, spreading it out, much like positioning yourself like that. If you're able to keep it in the rear and the forward arcs, then you get to do your 2 different systems, front and back. You need to be in the forward arcs or the rear arcs, but it works. With them being agile, it means every time they move an inch, you can move them 45 degrees in an angle. And that is awesome, especially when they're submersed and they're only moving 1 inch. You can move them 45 degrees to keeping them within the arc of keep the target inside the chosen arc. Hopefully we've covered enough to go through the torpedoes and to go through the submarine element of the game. And I look forward to doing more of these, and maybe even get a couple more shots with get some of the German fleet on up against the US fleet, or do a little bit of back and forth between the Japanese and the Germans. because they've both got different range of tactics for each of their different ships, and it's really interesting in the way that they put them together. So like, subscribe, enjoy, revisit however you want. Let me know if you like the Victory at Seas options. Happy to do a few more things in different game systems. I've got a couple of other options coming up. So see you all soon. Like, subscribe, all the bits and pieces. Thank you so very much, and stay safe. Okay, bye.